a legitimate, fair-minded person in Congress. They're getting harder and harder to find. Congressman Mike Quigley has been and is that. And Congressman Quigley, welcome. Thanks for coming on again.
I got to tell you, the last segment, there are days here I feel like St. Lawrence.
Yeah, well said. Well said. All right, so here's my question for you. President Biden expected to sign this executive order restricting asylum today. This is a step, and a step in the right direction. I mean, the news channels and the far right and the far left can beat this up all day, but this is a step. It's impossible to argue that it's not a step, right?
Well, right. And let's remember, let's preface this by reminding ourselves that immigration didn't used to be a partisan issue. I mean, Ronald Reagan's, one of his first official statements coming in as president said, we need to continue the American tradition of welcoming people from other countries, especially those fleeing oppression. And he called for the millions of undocumented illegal immigrants, he called them, present in the country, be given recognition and a path to legal status. On the other hand, we always knew that the asylum system never anticipated the volumes that we're facing, and there is a process to limit this and be more orderly while securing the border. You know we had a bill to do that with Republican Senator Langford.
Yep.
That was comprehensive. It was just earlier in the year. The Republicans helped write it, and then I think former President Trump, recognizing that it might alleviate the problem, said you have to vote against it.
Well, there have been no shortage of Republicans in leadership who have said we can't allow Biden to have an election year win. This is the stuff, Congressman Quigley, that used to be said behind closed doors that is now said out loud without any shame whatsoever. In other words, I'm not interested in solving the problem. I'm interested in keeping my office.
Well, look, there are victories here where we get beyond that. We get some spending bills done. It was tough. We got a security measure done on Intel, the Ukraine spending, but they're few and far between. There are Republicans I can work with on this issue and others. If we can manage to get past November and still keep governing, we'll be in good shape. But immigration is a complicated issue. It has to be addressed. It's critical to our security, but it's also critical to our economy. I was at an event with the agricultural, hospitality, and manufacturing leaders of Illinois earlier this year, and they all said the same thing. We need workers. We need a work permit process to improve, but it's all part of a larger system of, again, securing the border, passing comprehensive immigration reform, helping the dreamers, and addressing the crisis in these home countries that is the reason people are fleeing there, to stem the tide at its base.
So, Congressman, this step of restricting asylum, should he have done this earlier in his presidency, and why is the timing now?
I think they might have been overly optimistic that this bipartisan bicameral Senate bill would pass, because it gave them the numbers they needed, the resources, additional border guards and judges to handle this process. So I think you raise a good point. They were probably too optimistic that the Congress would do something, and now forced to the limit, they do this. So I guess it's never too late to do the right thing. And we just need to move forward and hope that Congress will act on a broader basis sooner rather than later.
What can Congress do for those who just want the political win and shut it down, if anything?
Well, I mean, what can Congress do to sort of address the issue broadly and take it out of everybody's sail? Provide the resources necessary to build up the system to secure the border,
as opposed to tearing it down.
Right, and address the crisis in these home countries. these are all fair game for this. Part of these proposals deal with all the issues that people are concerned about. The bipartisan agreement would have funded 100 cutting-edge inspection machines to detect fentanyl at the southern border.
Right.
And most of the fentanyl comes through the border ports of entry, not crossings elsewhere. It's
and it's been proven time and time again. Americans bringing it back from Mexico.
Right.
Yeah. Americans have been the number one mules.
So if we get the right resources and the right frame of mind, not everyone's going to be happy with any compromise. But as you state all the time, that's the nature of compromise.
Yeah, and if you can't live in the middle, I just come back to the same thing. And obviously, it goes for Democrats as well. You can scream all you want on the far left and the far right. How do you think it's going to end? You're still going to have 50% of the country that doesn't agree with your point of view. That's how we got into this mess. The way we get out is to talk to each other.
Talk to each other, and I tell folks from outside my district and other states, people come to D.C. I said, look, if you're going to vote Democrat, you're going to vote Republican, that's fine. But try to ask the candidates whether or not they're willing to compromise to get things done. It seems that more people are asking the opposite question. Occasionally I hear, you get this done, but don't you compromise? And I respectfully feel like saying, which one do you want?
Right. Yeah, because both aren't the same.
Exactly.
Yeah. We have a hockey question. Let's go to Hockey Central. Jane.
I do have a hockey question. I know you love hockey and the Blackhawks, but I got to ask, Edmonton Oilers or Florida Panthers in the Stanley Cup?
Yeah, I almost feel sorry for Canada, the hockey capital of North America for so long.
Or the
they
world.
haven't won a cup in years.
Yep.
But I can't get over the fact that the Gretzky Oilers stymied my Blackhawks for years. So when it comes to, when we get to the finals in sports, and I'm no longer cheering, I become one of those petty haters. So
Understandable.
I still hate Edmonton and the Gretzkys for beating my Savard and Secord Blackhawks all those years. So go Florida.
Okay.
And we're going to talk about, Coach Q did an interview not that long ago where he'd like to get back into hockey, and frankly, I hope he does, because he's one of the greats, obviously. But we're also going to talk about the Chicago Sky mess coming up, because here's the analogy, because, Congressman, you know I'm a hockey nut like you are. Gretzky, I remember Gretzky in his prime, and I particularly remember an All-Star game in Minneapolis where Gretzky skated around like he was wearing bubble wrap. And that's no knock on Wayne Gretzky. He was the greatest of all time by far. But there was an understanding that if you took out Gretzky, if you cheap-shotted Gretzky, you would be thrown into a Canadian river and stomped on by moose. The NHL knew what they had. And the idea that Caitlin Clark is not the cash cow the WNBA needs at this point is insane. So I hope the Sky get a handle on this.
Well, I think there's a difference between fair play and not treating anybody above the rules and cheap-shotting somebody who's so important to the league. I just always hated the cheap shot stuff in any sport. It's not productive. And hockey had a time that you'd agree was just too much fighting.
Sure.
And WWF, and it needed to strike a balance. We saw that with Connor Bedard getting injured last year.
Yep.
They're coming to see Connor Bedard, not somebody who cheap shots them. So, right, it's a balance in sports. The only comparison I have is I was talking to the president of Finland once, and he described Putin playing hockey. And he said, yeah, he thinks he's a great player. He scores 5-6 goals a game because no one will get within 10 yards of him because they don't want to end up in a gulag. Maybe there's a lesson to be learned there. I'm not sure.
The WNBA gulag breaking news coming up later. Thank you, Congressman. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you both.